So students, we are just continuing from yesterday's lesson. Yesterday only we have just completed the different types of the division, meiosis and mitosis involved during the formation of the gametes, means gametogenesis. So in gametogenesis we have observed that mitosis occurs somewhere, we have observed that meiosis occurs somewhere. Most of the time meiosis is required to produce the haploid cell from the diploid cell, that is called as gamete. And three different ways: somewhere gametic meiosis there, somewhere zygotic meiosis is there, somewhere sporic meiosis is there. We all have completed all these things, and now we are moving on to the next part of the topic, next part of the topic that we are discussing, that is what? Events in the sexual reproduction. Earlier only we have divided the complete sexual reproduction based on the key event of the sexual reproduction, that is fertilization. If you have remember, fertilization is the key event. Before fertilization, the pre-fertilization event, and after fertilization, the post-fertilization event. So we are just going to remind you once again, I'm just going to remind you once again, the pre-fertilization in events involve two basic processes. One is gametogenesis that we have completed, and second one is the gamete transfer that we are just going to start right now. So friends, so students, I'm just going to start with the gamete transfer now. As usual, the word is very simple, we can understand well. The gamete transfer means the transfer of gamete from one side to another side. Listen carefully why the process is important. Because the site of fertilization is somewhere else located, either in the female's body or outside of the body, where the female gamete is present, and the male gamete has to travel to reach to the site of fertilization. So how the male gamete is shifting or transferring or transporting from the site of origin to the site of fertilization is known as the gamete transfer. Once again I'm repeating, how the male gamete is transferring or shifting to the site of fertilization is called as gamete transfer. So gamete transfer is a very crucial process. If gamete transfer does not occur, means there is no chance of fertilization. So just understand how the gamete transfer occur. Very important and very usual means. The very important, very crucial mean is the gamete transfer occurs by mean of water. How water helps in the transfer of the gamete? Just understand. Some of the plants, majority of the plants like aquatic plants and animals. One more important thing we have to take care like that. We have discussed earlier also. The male gametes are motile, while female gametes are non-motile. You knows very well, but some of the cases, some exceptions are there, like some of the algae and fungi. Algae and fungi, both gametes are motile. So usually for transferring the gamete from site of formation, transferring the male gamete from site of formation to the site of fertilization, organisms need a specific medium, and usually that medium of transfer is water. So normally the aquatic plants and animals transfers their gamete with the mean of by the mean of the water. If we could take the example of that, the organism by in whom the gamete is transferred, basically the aquatic animals like algae, bryophytes, and pteridophytes. So this is very simple process कि after formation of the gametes, the organisms discharge their gametes into the aquatic medium, that is in the water only. The water will carry these gametes to the site of fertilization where the fertilization occurs. But a very important thing, just take care of that, during the water transfer or during the transfer of gamete by the mean of water, the large number of male gametes are required. Remember, large number of male gametes required. This is very important question. I am just highlighting the question. Why does the large number of gametes required during the gamete transfer by the mean of water? The question is asked many of the time there in the CBSE examination. So reason behind that, at the time of fertilization, when the gametes are traveling through the mean of water, there may be a chance to get damage. And due to damage, they fail to reach to site of fertilization, means to the female gamete. So this is the reason why the male gametes are more in number, even 1,000 times than the female gametes, than female gametes. Remember, if any question is being asked regarding that, why the male gametes are produced in the large number than the female gamete, so your answer will be single line answer. This is to compensate the loss of male gametes. Are you getting my point? Whenever the question is there, why the male gametes are more in number produced, why the male gametes are produced more in number than the female gamete, so your answer will be always to compensate the loss of gametes while the traveling of gamete from the site of formation to the site of fertilization. Is it clear to you all? Similarly, next way, in seeded plants, you know as well that gymnosperm, angiosperm, and some of the aquatic plants are also there, those who are having the seeds. So in seeded plant we cannot go with the mechanism, we cannot go with the transfer of gamete with the help of water. So for that, at that time, what they are just going to adopt. And one more problem is there, if plant is dioecious. So in case of dioecious, what is the meaning of dioecious? If you remember, yesterday only I just discussed unidioecious, unisexual, dioecious, and separate means male flower is on different plant and female flower is on different plant. So in such case, male flower has anther, female flower has ovule. Anther will produce the pollen grains and ovules have female gametes. So now this is important कि this pollen grain should reach to the female gamete for the process of fertilization. So at the time of shifting of pollen grain to the female flower, means pollen grains are transferring from one flower to another flower, whether the flower is lying on the same plant or lying on the another plant. So that process is called as pollination. So are you getting my point? In the seeded plant, the transfer of gamete occur by the mean of pollination. Pollination may be of two different type: self pollination and second one is cross pollination. If bisexual plants are there and if unisexual plants are there, so how does fertilization occur in such cases? The pollen grains by the mean of various pollinating agencies like wind, insects, bats, etc. We'll discuss it later in the next chapter. Fall on the surface of stigma of female flower. The pollen grain germinates. After their germination, the growth of pollen tube occur. And this pollen tube is actually responsible for carrying the male gamete. Carrying the male gamete to the egg in ovule. Are you getting? This is very important. Not the pollination. Actually, the pollen tube is a structure which is carrying the male gamete to the pollen tube is the structure which is carrying the male gamete to the egg, and when it reaches to the egg, then fertilization occur and forms fertilization occurs and forms the zygote. Are you getting my point? In case of the seeded plant, what I am saying, usually the simple mean of transport of the pollen grain is the pollination. Pollination means what? Shifting of pollen grain from one flower to the another flower. One flower to another flower means what? The male flower is having pollen grain or stamen. Stamen is male flower is having stamen which produces the pollen grains, and pollen grains will be shifted by various agencies like air, water, whatever is there. These agencies will transfer the pollen grains to the next flower which is female. As soon as the pollen grains falls on the surface of the female flower, the surface of the female flower means stigma. We'll discuss it later in detail in the next chapter. On stigma, it will absorb the moisture, gets germinated thereon, and will develop a kind of structure called as pollen tube. The pollen tube is actual structure which is responsible for conveying the gamete, transferring the male gamete to the site of fertilization, that is ovule. So this pollen tube is actually the structure which is going to convey the pollen tube or convey the male gamete to the site of fertilization, means to the ovule, not the pollination. Pollination is only the agency which is transferring the pollen grain from one flower to the another flower. Is it okay? Is it clear to you all? So students, till now we have completed the events in sexual reproduction, where we have understood how the gametes are produced. They are in the male and female gonad, microgamete, macrogamete. Microgamete is having capacity to move. Locomote means the microgamete or the male gamete is motile, while the female gamete is non-motile. Female gamete provide the nutrition for the purpose of fertilization, and here we are just going to understand ki how the transfer occurs, by the mean of water, by the mean of air, by pollination. Everything we have completed till now. Now we are just going to understand the key event of the sexual reproduction. You knows very well the key event of sexual reproduction is fertilization. What is fertilization? In very smart, very state forward way, this is a vital event, our most vital event. Fertilization is considered as most vital event of sexual reproduction. Most vital event of sexual reproduction. What is fertilization? Fertilization is actually, what is fertilization? Fusion of male and female gamete. And the fusion of male and female gamete is called as syngamy or fertilization. Fusion of male and female gamete is called as fertilization. Dear student, one very important concept for the NEET examination: why the fertilization is necessary? What is the objective of fertilization? फर्टिलाइजेशन क्यों होता है? वी मस्ट अंडरस्टैंड. बहुत ज़रूरी क्वेश्चन है, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन है. फर्टिलाइजेशन का ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या होता है? तो टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट इज़ द ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ फर्टिलाइजेशन इज, रिमेंबर, इफ द पेरेंट्स आर डिप्लॉयड, I'm just going to explain why the fertilization is necessary. If the parents are diploid, during the gametogenesis, what happened? If you have seen, if you have remember, it is meiosis will produce the haploid gamete. So suppose the human cells are there, 46 number of chromosomes will reduce to the half, 23 number of chromosome. So can you think this 23 chromosomal cells or the cells with 23 chromosome will lead to the development of new organism? Is it so? Is it possible? The cell with the only 23 number of the chromosome can develop the new organism? It is not possible. But the normal somatic cell must have 46 number of chromosome, then only this is possible to grow in form of the new organism. Cell that is having only 23 number of chromosome cannot develop the normal individual. Instead, it must have a diploid cell. So fertilization, what does? Fertilization is going to restore the diploidic situation. Are you getting my point? The gametogenesis, if you have remember, destroys diploidy, means gametogenesis will produce the cell and N. But during the fertilization, once again N plus N will get converted in form of 2N, and this 2N is required to produce the new organism. Any problem? So what is the objective of fertilization? Always keep in mind, the fertilization occurs to maintain the diploidic condition. Whatever the diploidy is getting destroyed, whatever the diploidic condition is destroyed, that should be restored by the process of fertilization. Now just understand how and where does the fertilization occurs. How and where does the fertilization occurs? And what is the basic need, basic requirement? Remember, I'm just going to answer these two questions. Fertilization occurs either inside the body or outside body. And what is the basic requirement? Always it requires some of the aquatic medium. If it is outside body, then it must be the water, and when it is inside the body, it must be the body fluid.